Matt,
Yeah,
Matt, the Magic Moscona.
that I've been called a lot of things. The Magic Moscona is not one that I've ever been called before. So, congratulations, Lon. You've officially given me a new nickname. Not that I needed one, but you gave it to me.
Matt, the masterpiece Moscona. How you doing,
That's
man?
another new one. I'm good, man. How are you?
Doing wonderful, bro. I really wanted to get you on here to get your thoughts of this crazy sea change, this shift um, in regards to LSU. Thanks for coming back on. Thanks for your
Yeah, man.
return.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
This for anyone watching this who does not know, and you should if you're an LSU fan. This is ESPN 1045's After Further Review host, Matt the Magic Moscona. And, Matt, here we are. Last time we talked, we both kind of agreed that LSU would improve as the year went along, but after a top 10 win, a win at the Swamp, and Jordan Hare, a comeback victory down 13 versus Mississippi State, which turned into a 15-point win. Of course, the beat down at the hands of Tennessee, we do have to throw that in there. Are you surprised at how LSU have done this, the way LSU have Michael cobbled together a 6-2 record?
No, I'm not actually. I thought they'd be 6-2 right now. I flipped the Florida and Florida State games, so I had them beating Florida State, losing to Florida.
Okay.
And honestly, I would take that, Lon. I mean, I'd rather the SEC win. I mean, you can have that season open and whatever that was against Florida State. I mean, obviously, I'd like if LSU and Florida State played now, I think LSU beats them by 2 touchdowns. But so no, I'm not surprised that they're 6-2, and I'm not surprised how they've done it. I mean, I was pretty bullish on Jayden Daniels at all off season. I mean, there were a lot of people that were pretty adamant Miles Brennan would win the job, and then were pro Nussmeier. And Daniels always made the most sense because of his dual threat ability and his experience. And I think he's just being maximized now. He's a little more comfortable. So if I'm surprised at anything, I would tell you I'm surprised at how much the offensive line has developed. I think that's a very positive development this year. Because boy, they were so bad early, and it's hard to imagine them turning the corner like they have. And I think Charles Turner deserves a ton of credit because he has really anchored the middle at center. And the other thing that I'm surprised at is how bad they are at special teams. Um, like sometimes, Lon, sometimes like you're missing a guy, right? Like you don't have a great returner or you don't have a great place kicker. Like something that can be solved in recruiting.
Yeah.
LSU's issues are way deeper than that, man. It's like we talk so much about special teams issues, then you go play Ole Miss and you're offsides on the opening kickoff. I mean, they just invent new ways to be bad at special teams. So
It's crazy.
I would say those are my surprises. But am I surprised that they're 6-2? I'm not. I thought they'd be 6-2. I think they're a little better at this point at 6-2 than I thought they'd be, with a legitimate chance to finish 9-3.
That's my record that I predicted preseason was 9-3 and got a lot of crap for it, but it's looking good right now. But I mean, it all had to begin, really with this Ole Miss win. We really had to beat Ole Miss, and however we did it was fine by me. But the fact that we just absolutely bullied and punished Ole Miss, what stuck out most to you, Matt, with Saturday's win?
Yeah, I think one thing on each side of the ball. Offense, I would tell you, it was the ability to salt the game away. I mean, the offensive line did what they did against Auburn in the second half, and really against Mississippi State in the second half as well, which they established the line of scrimmage and LSU just ran over. I mean, it's a very comforting thing whenever, if you need to go into a 4-minute offense to finish off a game and they can't stop you from running when they know you're going to run. That's a pretty it's a pretty empowering feeling. And then defensively, I think it's Matt House's adjustments. I would love it if they started faster. and
Yeah,
didn't get down to everybody they play. But it's just so clear. You have a large enough sample now, right? Where we saw them rally against Florida State. We saw them allow only a second half field goal to Mississippi State. They shut out Auburn in the second half. They shut out Ole Miss in the second half. Like, they're a defense that's very clearly good, and they're a staff that's very clearly good at seeing what an offense, how an offense is attacking them, and adjusting in game. Um, the problem against Tennessee was they just got too far down to too good of a team,
yeah.
and started chasing points, and that just allowed the snowball to roll downhill. But a lot of that's encouraging, man. It's, you can see the structure of the program being built, which is pretty cool.
That's what it feels like to me. Is just like that was one of the best feelings. I mean, I know we beat Florida, and that was a great vibe as well. But like coming home, beating a top 10 team like that in that fashion, um, Matt, that totally just felt like kind of like a turning of the page. Finally, the last 2 years, your offensive line bullying people, kind of old school LSU football in a way. Um, it was very interesting, like almost like Brian Kelly was saying, that's our identity this season. Is kind of just like we're going to adapt to the opponent, and this opponent right now, we are going to just like punish your face. Like that's what it just seemed like to me with Ole Miss. But Matt, can 2022 LSU play better than they did versus Ole Miss, or is this?
Yeah, they cannot get down 17-3. I mean, that's like the right, Lon. I mean, the things that, like, if you're looking at the final month and say, okay, you've very clearly seen improvement in some spots. I think you'd agree with this. Like, the offensive line is, I think, objectively better today than they were at the start of the season. When you had Garrett Dellinger as your start at center, I mean, you found your starting offensive line, and they found their stride. Right, Emory Jones at right tackle has been really good. Charles Turner's established at center. Will Campbell has been, fantastic. Not just for a true freshman, just as a left SEC left tackle, he's been fantastic.
Crazy.
So there's spots where you've improved. Jayden Daniels is obviously become more comfortable throwing the football and taking shots. I think you've found a rhythm with Harold Perkins defensively now, and what your rotations are going to look like. So if I looked ahead and I said, okay, where do I want him to improve over the final month? Well, special teams is an obvious one. Like, stop committing penalties on every special teams unit. Tackle. Don't catch the ball. Tackle. Like, do fundamental football things that you've been doing since you were 8 years old playing this game.
That's the thing. What is the issue, Matt, with the special teams? What is going on there? How can it be that bad? Sorry to interrupt, but
No. I mean, Lon, I'm not a special teams coach, but I've talked to enough of them. Like, it's just, when you practice special teams, it's no different than practicing a football play. It doesn't have to be any different.
Yeah.
Than when you're covering a kick, it's no different than if you're a defensive back breaking down to tackle a back or receiver in the open field. It's a football play.
Yeah.
But they're undisciplined. I not only on tackling, but as we've talked about, on receiving kicks. The Jack Besh muff against Tennessee, before the kickoff, they were switching sides of the field and then running up 20 yards. Well, you're not putting your return man in an advantageous position. You're putting him at a disadvantage by making him run across the field and then come up 20 yards.
Absolutely. It looked like the Tennessee kicker actually noticed that and was like, I'm going to kick Jack into like the worst spot possible.
He sky kicked him. I mean, and I doubt that was the first time all year that Tennessee has sky kicked somebody. So, be aware that that's a possibility. That's scouting and coaching. It is. There's no other way around it, man. It's Brian Polian is doing a lousy job as a special teams coordinator. I mean, when you have, and look, you got a guy off sides, you've got a legal formation on a punt. I mean, it's a never-ending litany. I mean, it's a comedy of errors, and it's not isolated to one thing. Like I said before, you can recruit a kicker. Like, if you're having trouble, I'll tell you one thing. I'll say something positive. Against Ole Miss, they let Nathan Dybert kick off, and they said, hey, forget just trying to, like, sky kick or land it at the one. Because some coaches want you to, because the kick's moved up, they want you to land it at, like, the 3 in the corner, so that way you can cover a spot and maybe pick up. Like, just kick it through the end zone. Just kick it through the end zone, just give him the ball at 25. And he did. I think all but maybe one, I don't have it in front of me right now, but I think maybe all but one kickoff was a touchback. So, like, that's progress. But
Bear's good.
That's what I want to see,
Bear's good, and I was kind of like, what? I don't think he was kicking earlier in the season either. So that is some progress there.
Yeah.
Do you think Polian should be removed as special teams coordinator, but kept on as the recruiting coordinator?
Yeah, I don't know how you do that, because if you have 10 full-time assistants, I don't know how you keep someone as only the recruiting coordinator. Like, you would have to coach a position.
Absolutely.
So no, I don't know how you do that. Now I'm not now, nor have I ever been a fire the coach guy. I don't call for people's jobs. I just don't think that's my role to say this guy needs to be fired. But what I will tell you is, at this point, it's hard to justify. I think it's going to be hard for Brian Kelly to justify keeping him. It's been bad. I mean, it's been really bad. I mean, and it's weird too, Lon, because if you go look at Brian Polian's bio, man, he has been a special teams coordinator at some high-level places for a long time. And when you watch LSU, man, it's not like they've got walk-ons covering kicks and stuff, man. I mean, you'll see Baskerville and you'll see starters running down the field, man. It's just really bizarre to see the issues that they've had.
It is, and it just continues each game, and it's bizarre how much. I mean, I was watching the game with my parents, and my mom was like, "Oh no, LSU are getting down," and I was like, "Oh, this is just kind of a thing that they do, Mom. It's just a thing that they do this year.
Yeah,
they'll be fine.
They'll be okay. Check back at
really,
halftime. It'll be a brand new game."
I was like, hey, if we can stop the run, we'll get back in this game, because they were getting some empty yards in the receiving game, not really being able to finish it off. It was like, we'll see what we can do here. And sure enough, they chipped away. But Matt, one of the things that stuck out to me is how this current team, rugged, rough on the edges, but they're winning games in multiple ways. We ran it down Ole Miss's throat. Daniels threw it all over at Florida, which was a big shocker for a lot of people. We rode Daniels' legs versus Mississippi State and Auburn. Our defensive turnovers were also huge in that game. What do you feel has been like the discernible identity of this team, if there is one?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about how you kind of describe the ways that they've won, I don't think some of those early were intentional. I think it was out of necessity. Like,
God,
Jayden running the ball early in the season was, oh my God, the line's a sieve. I just need to go take off and get yards.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he did.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I mean, Saturday against Ole Miss, Lon, Brian Kelly even said this after the game. A big part of the offensive development was designed runs for Jayden. Like, you are seeing true RPO concepts and read option concepts. And even throwing the ball off of those concepts, like the touchdown pass to Mason Taylor on 3rd and goal, which is beautiful. Yeah.
You saw there's guys that are still sliding past Jayden Daniels moves right now, Matt. I mean,
man.
It was sick.
But I think that's been the biggest development there is, look, man, if you're going to try to play in coverage against LSU's receivers, okay, do so at your own peril, because there's enough talent now with LSU, with Daniels being complemented by Josh Williams, whose emergence has been really cool. Getting Armani Goodwin back was great to see. He looked explosive against Ole Miss.
Yeah.
LSU's content, man. If you go play coverage, just run it for 8 yards a clip on you, and they can do it pretty effectively. So this is it's a fun offense. It's become a fun offense, and you asked about their identity. I think moving forward, the identity is still, you're going to feature your receivers. You're going to spread it out and look to throw it. But if teams try to put numbers in coverage and there's yards underneath, LSU's more than content to take them and keep moving the chains, because you got a quarterback that's really smart with the football and doesn't turn it over.
Absolutely. Jayden Daniels, I mean, basically turnover free this whole season in comparison to the SEC quarterbacks. To the other SEC quarterbacks, he's been very clean, and now 11 touchdowns in the last 2 games. I mean, just crazy stuff. And Matt, kind of continue with Jayden Daniels. If Jayden Daniels were to say hypothetically opt out tomorrow, never play another down for LSU football, where would his 2022 season rank right now for you among LSU quarterbacks? Like in the hit,
Everybody would be super pissed at him, man. Are you kidding me? If he opted out right now?
I'm just meaning hypothetically, never played another down at LSU. Just since there's some time here to talk about it before Alabama to ask the hypothetical. Um, after these performances, after the way he's led these comebacks, where does this season kind of rank
Well,
for you with quarterbacks at LSU?
well, I, it's incomplete. I'm not trying to dodge the question. I understand what you're asking, but if I had to say, all right, and I wouldn't even say like if he opted out, and I don't want to say injury because I don't want to wish that on someone. So like, knock on wood. But like if for whatever reason Jayden wasn't able to play anymore, and all we had was an 8-game sample, I would tell you that he's probably the best dual threat quarterback LSU's ever had. That was never really a cornerstone of the Miles era or any era prior.
Yeah,
Herb Tyler was a good runner. And they ran some option with Herb. I can't go back to like the 1940s and tell you what they were doing with like Van Buren and guy. But so maybe there was someone back then. But he's better. He's a better runner and passer than Jordan was. And Jordan was a pretty good dual threat player. But right now it's incomplete. But I would tell you that I think the most important thing that Jayden Daniels has given LSU is time, because he's a bridge. Whether he returns for the 2023 season or goes pro, what Jayden Daniels did in 2022 was perfectly provide a bridge between what was and what will be, meaning the Ogeron era and the Brian Kelly era. And he allowed those young quarterbacks time to grow and develop. This isn't a new thought, but one of the biggest question marks about LSU football is, what if Ryan Perrilloux hadn't been suspended or kicked off the team in 2008?
yes,
Because not only was Perrilloux a magnificent player, but it also would have allowed Jarrett Lee the opportunity to sit and watch and learn and grow and develop and mature. And Jarrett was a great arm talent, a really good player, and became a good player by the end of his career. But man, he was completely derailed by the interceptions from having to play so early. And I feel like if Nussmeier had to play this year, if Walker Howard had to play this year, they'd have faced that same fate. And who knows, maybe would have ruined a really talented young player. So, yeah, I think Jayden Daniels is far from done. You got a month to go in this season and maybe another season after that. But, if it did end today, I would tell you the most important thing he did was provide a bridge to allow those younger players time to mature, which is going to benefit LSU 100-fold, in the years to come.
100% agree. And Jayden Daniels at the same time winning games for LSU and in style and fashion and kind of getting better each game. And I asked you this last time about JD, heading to the NFL after this year, returning for another season. You told me this was a transfer predicated on his NFL goals, of course, helping to achieve those. If you are an NFL GM, Matt, if you're an NFL GM right now and you need a quarterback in spring of 2023, are you drafting Jayden Daniels?
Do I need a quarterback to come in and start as a rookie? Is that what you're asking?
Be that franchise guy.
No, not to start as a rookie. There's things that you really – so a lot of times teams will draft a skill set. You look for the arm, the maneuverability, and Jayden has a lot of that, man. His ability to move in the pocket, which is so much of what – and hurt you with your feet, which is so much of what the NFL is doing. Look at Jalen Hurts, man. Yes. I mean, look, Lamar Jackson is an outlier. I mean, he's a total freak show. But you look at Jalen Hurts, you can look at Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. These are guys that aren't what Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and in the past, guys like Dan Marino or John Elway which is these statuesque pocket passers, right? I mean, they're
exact
isn't,
word I was thinking, statuesque.
yeah, it's not and I know sometimes we said people just think, oh, dual threat quarterback. They just think black quarterback, which is not the case because like Josh Allen will murder you with his feet. Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow. I mean, we saw that at LSU, and you're seeing it now with Joe Burrow. Like if you don't respect his ability to run, he will hurt you.
Yeah.
And so Jayden has that in a dynamic way. But I think you saw along, the first 8 games of the season, how long it took Jayden to be comfortable. Like quarterback coaches will often tell you this. I'm not a quarterback coach, so I'm just repeating something I've been told. This isn't like a unique thought or anything. But they'll say, like in high school, you throw the ball when the receiver is open. In college, you throw it when they're getting open. In the pros, you have to anticipate them being open, throw to a spot. Jayden, at the beginning of this season, was almost taking the high school approach. Like he was only throwing it if you were open, and if not, he would eat it.
100%.
Now he's getting better right now, but like that ain't gonna fly at the next level. So I think his development still has a ways to go, but I think there's teams that would draft the skill set absolutely, and maybe try to give him time to grow and develop. Maybe like what San Francisco did with Trey Lance. What Green Bay did, where you draft a guy to sit behind your franchise, an aging franchise quarterback to say, all right, in a year or two, it may be your turn. But if I need a guy to come in and be the starter in 2023 in the NFL, that he wouldn't be my guy, no.
And also another hypothetical, because in 2023, if he does return, if it were up to you, Matt, would you rather have first year starter Walker Howard come in, or a second year of Jayden Daniels?
Jayden Daniels, that's the easiest question you'll ask me all night. Give me a guy that's got 40 career starts, 100 times out of 100. Walker will have his time, but if you're going to tell me I get a guy that has all that experience, that's going to be 22 years old, that started 40 games, that's had a year as a starter in this system, there is just no substitute for experience. It's cliche, but it's a fact. Like you cannot manufacture experience. You can only get it by going and doing it. So until Walker or Nussmeier or whomever starts 40 games, they will not have the experience Jayden does. Now, it's not to say that experience is the only factor that matters, but my goodness, like the fact that Jayden Daniels wasn't overwhelmed at the start of this season is why LSU was able to win games. They got down 13-0 to Mississippi State. He didn't blink. You get down 17-0 on the road at Auburn, he ain't concerned. He's been there. So, man, you get like Lon. If Jayden Daniels comes back for another year, like the conversation we will be having is LSU is a national championship contender next year. If Jayden Daniels comes back, if he does not, then we will not be having that conversation. But if
I just want to know your preference.
Oh, but if he always give me the experienced, talented quarterback. Always.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just hearing a lot of people, with that whole Jayden Daniels coming back talk. If he does, I'm just hearing a lot of fans saying their preference would be, first year of Walker Howard, let Jayden Daniels go to the NFL. So I just wanted to know your preference.
That's because fans are stupid. Don't listen to them.
Well, because it seems like Jayden Daniels is putting the whole package together, and we would be kind of lucky if he stayed.
Absolutely. I can't even believe. I can't believe there is anyone at this point that there's a soul. Let me even spell it out better for you. Let me use history as a lesson. Okay. 2012, Zach Mettenberger becomes LSU starter.
Yes.
The first 2 months of that season were bad. Zach Mettenberger and LSU's offense were not good. Starting with the Alabama, go look up his numbers. I can pull them up for you. If you have a computer, pull it up. Pull up Zach Mettenberger 2000. Hang on.
Let's see here.
Pull up Zach Mettenberger 2012 game log. We can do this together.
All right.
We're gonna do. You got it.
Let's see here. 2012. Yep, right here.
Pull up Zach Mettenberger's game log from 2012 and look at the first 8 games of that season. And tell me if there's anything that looks even remotely impressive to you.
192, 1 touchdown, 1 pick against North Texas.
Oh, against North Texas. 192, a touchdown and a pick. Yeah, got it.
What's
What
up,
else?
Drew?
Oh, here we go. I told you. That's
Drew,
Lon.
what's
Say
up?
hi, Lon.
Drew, what's up, my man?
He's all right. You can go now.
Welcome back, bro.
You should feel honored.
Well, Mettenberger, yeah, and then you saw him the next year.
No, but look at the Alabama game. Look at Mettenberger, Alabama 2012.
298, 1 touchdown, 0 picks, 24 to 35.
He was awesome. And then look at the rest of that season. Look at the rest of 2012 for Zach. He's boom. That's when it clicked. Now look, and then you got Zach Mettenberger in 2013 with Jarvis and Odell. He threw for 3,000 yards, became the first quarterback since Tommy Hodson to throw for 3,000. No, I think Rohan did it. Rohan and Tommy Hodson were the only ones that did it, to throw for 3,000 yards in a season. LSU was awesome. The offense was phenomenal in 2013.
I love that offense.
Bro, Jarvis, Odell, Jeremy Hill.
One-handed catches everywhere, man.
Dude, first offense in SEC history with a 3,000-yard passer, a 1,000-yard rusher, 2 1,000-yard receivers. They were awesome offensively. He hit that curve, man. Now look at Joe Burrow 2018. I dare you. Pull up Joe Burrow 2018.
Oh.
Look at Joe Burrow. Look at Joe Burrow's first start for LSU against Miami in 2018. Read his stat line. You have it?
Oh, I swear it was like something like 11 of 20 for like 100 something. Yeah, here we got it right.
Joe Burrow, his first start at LSU. Read Joe Burrow's first start at LSU.
Game against Miami. I remember he rushed for a few touchdowns in that, I think. Let's see here. But I don't think he threw for anything. Yep. 11 completions, 24 attempts.
11 of 24.
140, 0-0.
Bro, like
he didn't rush for a touchdown either.
And then if you're looking at his game chart, his game chart, Joe Burrow went in 2018, went the entire month of October without throwing a touchdown pass. Look at the goose eggs.
Florida, Georgia, Mississippi State, Alabama, 4 picks.
And you had no touchdown passes for the entire month of October. But look at what happened at the end of the year. They played Rice, they played A&M, they played the bowl game in the Fiesta Bowl, and he went boom and then carried it to 2019, and we know what happened. I'm not sitting there telling you if Jayden Daniels comes back, he's going to have a Joe Burrow season. What I'm telling you is we have now 2 examples of transfer quarterbacks at LSU that really struggled for 2/3 of their first year on campus and then boomed in their final month and then came back the next year and were phenomenal. And I'm telling you, you've already seen it with Met, you saw it with Burrow, and if Daniels comes back, you're seeing it with Daniels. I cannot imagine a soul who would prefer any of the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Nussmeier, Howard, Ricky Collins coming in, or any transfer over another year of Jayden Daniels. It makes no sense.
And it is kind of crazy because LSU were actually on the cusp of something special when no one really expected LSU to be in this position. If they beat Alabama, I mean, they're opening that Pandora's box, Matt. I mean, they would be heading to Atlanta. If it goes down, if we beat Alabama, what will be the number one reason above all that, LSU made it happen?
If LSU beats Alabama, I think it would be a game where you would have to harass Bryce Young. Because I'll tell you, Lon, this is my biggest concern about LSU. In years past, when you would look at Derek Stingley, Elias Ricks, Tre'Davious White, Dante Jackson, Greedy Williams, you know the list. You don't let me read it off for you. But I always would look at LSU's corners and go, yep, I like my guys better than your guys.
Yeah.
I could trust Derek Stingley on an island against anybody, and it wouldn't matter. I trust my guy. I like my guy better than your guy.
Yeah.
And so LSU could win at the line of scrimmage with numbers because you trusted your DBs to go win one-on-ones all night long. That's not the case with this team. Jark Bernard Converse is a nice player. Colby Richardson is a McNeese transfer. That is not Derek Stingley and Elias Ricks. That is not Tre'Davious White and Dante Jackson. That is not Patrick Peterson and Morris Claiborne. That's not who is out there. So I don't trust LSU to win matchups against Alabama's receivers. Look, Jonathan Mingo and Malik Heath from Ole Miss just abused LSU secondary for a half.
Absolutely.
The way LSU shut that offense down in the second half is they said, forget this, put the freak shows on the edge and go kill the quarterback. And that's what they'll have to do against Alabama. I mean, it's the only way. Because otherwise, if you try to play coverage against those guys, Bryce Young's too good. And their receivers, even though Bama's receivers aren't to Bama's standard, they're still better than LSU's corners. So I don't think you want to play track meet with that team. I think you try to pressure Bryce Young, force him into a few mistakes, try to steal a few possessions, hope they commit 17 penalties, and try to play a flawless turnover-free game and maybe try to steal one.
That's the thing. Hopefully they don't play JoJo Earl. He's a player who they rarely play. Whenever they do, former LSU commit.
Yeah.
Whenever Alabama does, he's amazing for them. But Saban just for some reason neglects to play this kid, and it's like hopefully he's off the field against us because he'd absolutely do some damage against us. But in the end, I felt like one of the biggest advantages LSU have had, is their fourth quarter conditioning. I've got people I talk to in the program. I'm hearing certain things, but from what you're hearing, Matt, from the people you talk to, is Jake Flint receiving plenty of love now for his work months ago?
I mean, is he receiving love? You mean like, is he getting bouquets publicly? I mean, probably not. But I think his no, I mean, like, you don't hear that talked about a bunch.
No,
like,
it was a dumb way to say the question.
No, but is he is he worthy? Sure, yeah, I think so. I mean, it's pretty clear this is a team that I keep using this analogy, and unless if I hear a better one, I'll keep using it. But they're almost like a horse, man. It's like a horse that's slow out of the gate, but as the race goes along, they go from like jogging to galloping to sprinting, and when they're full speed, they're going to be full speed longer than you can be full speed. You know what? I had a guy. I just thought about this, Lon. So I have a buddy. His name is Ari Temkin, who does Sirius XM radio for Big 12 Radio, and he went to Kansas. And I talked to him the day of the Kansas North Carolina national championship game in New Orleans. He came on the show with me, and he described Kansas as Secretariat. And so this is actually really good. This is a really good analogy. So listen. So Secretariat wasn't like the fastest horse. Secretariat could just maintain his top speed the longest. Like he could be in a full sprint the longest. That's kind of like LSU.
Yeah.
They're not the fastest out the gate, and they're not the fastest closer. But once they get up to their full sprint, like they're going to maintain their full sprint way longer, which is why you see other teams peter out and LSU continue on. So I would love it if they could start faster, but yeah, I mean, I think Jake Flint deserves a lot of credit. I mean, you have to give credit to the special teams coordinator when you have a well-conditioned team. But the other thing too is maybe the most overlooked part of Brian Kelly's organization so far is his attention to detail. I mean, down to – and he talked about this when he got hired, how they would have those like wellness checks and, how we would have everybody fill out their daily like accountability card, which sounds stupid and hokey, but it made everyone zero in on all the minute details and hold them accountable. Like Brian Kelly – I mean, I've heard when they travel, he's got like a 9-page itinerary he sends out. Like Les Miles after games would just like sometimes just have a cop drive him around campus so he could go see campuses. They would just hang out for a couple hours, and that ain't Brian Kelly. He is meticulous with his details. So like strength training, nutrition, all recovery, all of that. I'm not in any way surprised that would be part of it. So. I mean, it's just amazing what you see when you have a coach that actually is detail oriented, which, you know, I mean, Ed wasn't that, golly, last year. Look, there's different ways, man. There's different ways to do it. I'm not being critical. Ed's way didn't work, but shoot, I can remember last year in LA when they're playing UCLA, the day of the game, you got like Kayshon Boutte and some of those guys riding scooters around just on the street a few hours before the game, before they left. It's like, y'all going to play a game in a few hours? I mean,
Yeah.
it was just a lack of structure and discipline, and Brian Kelly is the antithesis of that. And I think this is a team that needed it. And long way of answering your question. I'll let you know if I did answer it,
No, perfect.
but yeah, I think Jake Flint deserves a lot of credit, as does Brian Kelly for his attention to detail.
I think Jake Flint, one of the best hires, one of the immediate hires he made. It was kind of funny, but Matt House was one that kind of took a while, but someone who came in, and I don't know about you, Matt, but I haven't had this much fun watching LSU defense since I think it's been like 2016 with Tre'Davious White, Jamal Adams, Beckwith, Key, young Devin White, Godshaw, Jackson. So many people on that defense. This defense reminds me of
Deion Jones.
Some type of special future Tiger group. I mean, you've got kind of this veteran group that were awesome last year at the back end of last year. Who held Alabama to like something like 6 rushing yards. That group really solidified, and they're kind of leading this young group in here. Just how kick ass is this Matt House defense?
Well, I think it's so. Look, I mean, Matt House, as much as we may not have known his name, the more you dig into him, you realize he was a pretty proven defensive coordinator. He had some good units at Kentucky that year when Josh Allen, the defensive end, not the quarterback, when Josh Allen had like 21 sacks at Kentucky. I mean, he was playing the jack linebacker in Matt House's defense. I mean, it's not hard to see why when 40 gets on the field for LSU in that spot, he does damage, right? I mean, it's exciting. But Matt House left the Kansas City Chiefs because he wants to be an NFL head coach, and he saw his path the way Dave Aranda did. Dave Aranda went from great defensive coaching freak show players at LSU, getting a lot of recognition for it, and parlaying that into a Power 5 head coaching job, like Kirby Smart did, right? Like Will Muschamp did. There's plenty of examples, but I think he realized his path to being a college head coach was better as a major college DC than an NFL linebackers coach. So, I mean, when you're ambitious, of course you're going to grind and drive, and he's motivated, which Matt House is. And I think it's just very obvious, man. When you see their ability to adjust in game, it's so impressive. If you want the antithesis of that, look at what Bo Pelini did against Mississippi State in 2020. I mean, they kept playing man. Even Mike Leach said after that game. Mike Leach said after that game in 2020, well, they just kept playing man, and we just kept throwing it over the top of them. I mean,
it was awful.
Yeah.
It was almost like Pelini was sabotaging LSU or something because it was just so willingly bad. I don't know. It was insane.
Well, Matt House is a far cry from whatever that was in 2020. Enjoy him because you're not going to have him long. But what I'll say is when Brian Kelly hired Matt House, my feeling was this, because when you look at his defensive coordinator hires during his time at Notre Dame, all those guys became head coaches, from Bob Diaco and Mike Elko and Clark Lee, who's the head coach at Vanderbilt right now, Marcus Freeman. I mean, Brian Kelly's a really good identifier of defensive coaching talent, and he churned out one after another after he kept after his assistants kept getting head coaching jobs, and he kept replacing them with other really good assistants. So you're going to lose Matt House at some point, but I really just think Brian Kelly will go find the next great one because he's been doing that for 2 decades now.
That's actually a brilliant point. I did not even think about that, but it's like, oh my God, yeah, all those guys were there underneath Kelly, at various stops. That's an incredible list just right there. And It's like Matt House will probably join them, and that's something that I've been worried about as well. But since the veterans of this defense, Ojulari, Jay Ward, Baskerville, Roy, Ali Gay wasn't there, but some of these type of guys shut down Bryce Young in Alabama last year, holding them to 6 rushing yards
Yeah.
and 20 points in that narrow loss. What are your rapid fire expectations for this defense versus Alabama on November 5th, Matt?
So I think the biggest difference is a year ago, you did have some pretty big veterans on the interior. You had Neil Farrell, you had Glenn Logan, and those were, fifth-year guys who played a ton of football and were really good run stuffers. Neil Farrell had a great year last year. They were a bad team, but he had a good year. It's going to be different. Jahmyr Gibbs poses a different kind of threat than a lot of the Alabama running backs we've seen in the past. He's pretty gifted. But I also like LSU's ability to run sideline to sideline. This defense reminds me a lot of 2019. And 2019 had their hiccups. Now, granted, the biggest difference, obviously, is in 2019 you had Stingley and Christian Fulton on the outside, which this team does not have. And yet Grant Delpit at safety was, it was phenomenal. But in the front seven, it kind of feels like when you had Jacob Phillips and Patrick Queen and, some real athletic dudes running on the edge. Caleb on Chasson, your BJ Ojolari kind of reminds you a lot of that. So, you don't have an Apuaika, a big run stuff in the middle. But I don't know if you need that in this game in particular. I just think you got to make sure Jahmyr Gibbs doesn't rip off the 70-yarders like he did against Arkansas. And LSU's fast enough and athletic enough in their front seven, I think, to make sure that doesn't happen. My bigger concern is just Bryce Young throwing the football. Because I just – what happened against Tennessee where Hendon Hooker, who's been so good, with Brew McCoy and Jalen Hyatt and those guys – LSU couldn't match up. And they're not going to be able to match up with Bryce Young throwing the football. So if you can't affect him, like if you can't pressure him and get him on the ground, he's liable to pick you apart sitting back there. So that's my big concern, man. I don't know if they can do it, Lon. I don't love the matchup for LSU's defense. But that's why they'll tee it up and kick it off and play the game in a couple of weeks, man.
It's going to be insane. I told you the last show I felt LSU would finish 9-3 because two things. I think this team is better than people know, and I believe that the SEC was weaker than most felt. I just saw schedules that said cannibalism to me, something like a cross-conference group therapy with Jeffrey Dahmer type thing. Is the conference weaker this year or just more competitive to you, the SEC?
No, it's a good question. So I think Bama and Georgia are still elite, but Tennessee has joined them.
Yeah.
So I think like LSU was in 2019, I'm not saying Tennessee is LSU of 2019. I'm just saying you had another team at the top of the conference. Georgia had already played in a national title game recently, and LSU sort of ascended and rejoined them that year. I think Tennessee is doing that. And there was a lot of expectation on teams like on A&M and Kentucky. But Lon, we might have talked about this the last time I was here, but back in July at Media Days, I said there were two big takeaways that I had. Number one was Alabama was really, really pissed off. And I thought they were going to be a wrecking ball this year. And injuries and some other things have prevented that. And I think they're a little weaker in spots than we thought. But that's one. Two was there was no consensus at all on who the second best team in each division was. Everyone agreed Bama was the best in the West and Georgia was the best in the East. But there was no consensus at all on who was the next. I mean, most people looked at the East and said, Kentucky?
Yeah.
Maybe Florida? Not many people were talking about Tennessee. Even the Tennessee people that I was talking to at Media Days were saying, Tennessee might be okay. See if Hendon Hooker can build on a good – like, no one expected this.
Crazy.
So you've kind of maybe had Tennessee replace that team as the next best. I think LSU's better than a lot of people thought they'd be, and A&M is not as good as their preseason reputation was. So I think what we all thought would happen is, use the word, but that the league would cannibalize each other. I mean, I think I said that I thought that whoever finished behind Bama in the West, I wouldn't be surprised if they were 5-3. I thought it would be this sort of homogenous blob of 5-3, 4-4 all throughout the league behind the top tier. But LSU seems like the one team that could push that in the West and maybe finish 7-1 or 6-2, depending on what they do against Bama.
That would be nuts. Matt, I know it's late. I only just a few more questions for you. Which LSU Tiger? There's so many different guys who are playing different roles on this team. Which Tiger do you think has played the most overlooked role in LSU's 6-2 campaign?
I'll give you one on each side of the ball, and they're both up the middle. Charles Turner. No one's talking about Charles Turner.
I know.
You remember the opening drive of the season? First play of the season, Jayden Daniels was flushed. He rolled left for 25 yards. Florida State hit him late out of bounds. He got an extra 15. On the second play, they threw the ball to Kayshawn in the corner of the end zone. Remember, it was contested. He couldn't come down with it. LSU ends up with a goal-to-go situation, and Garrett Dellinger snapped the ball 15 yards over Jayden Daniels' head.
Okay, yeah.
And they end up kicking a field goal. How much different is that game if LSU scores on its first possession? I don't know. I don't know the answer. But that certainly put the wheels in motion of issues that they had. And if Charles Turner were the starting center, he doesn't snap the ball over his head. Charles Turner hasn't just been serviceable. He's been really good. And it's the most important position on the offensive line because it makes sure the quarterback doesn't get pressure in his face. And you're also handling the snap every play. So that's been massive. The other is Mekhi Wingo. And I was glad to see him get recognized as SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week. But not only has he been massively productive, he's been versatile. They've used him in the interior. I don't know if you noticed in the second half against Ole Miss.
He was out on the edge.
He played left end.
Yeah.
They would play him at left end, Harold Perkins at right end, and then they'd go big in the middle with Roy and Guillory.
Yep. That was weird. That was awesome.
But that's Matt House's creativity. But the other thing, too, man, is Mekhi Wingo is playing because your best player tore his ACL in the first defensive series of the season. We were all expecting Mason Smith to be an All-American this year. I mean, they could not block him in fall camp, but on the first defensive series of the season, he tore his ACL. And we have not talked at all about Mason Smith's absence because Mekhi Wingo's been so good. So absolutely. I'll give you those two guys that have been paramount to LSU's success that have not gotten nearly enough attention.
I'm so glad you brought up Wingo. He is someone that we've interviewed a few times now at this point, someone we've gotten to know really well over the last, even during the offseason. I was aware of his abilities. I saw, probably about 4 or 5 practices in person, and he was just mauling people, and it was like, damn, he backed up his all-SEC freshman abilities. And, his stats, he only had like 4 starts in his first freshman year, but he had a pick 6 for like 36 yards. And I just like, what? And I watched the film of it. I'm like, okay, this dude is athletically unreal. Yeah. And you just saw the culmination of that, coming in behind Mason Smith, having that huge fumble recovery in the first game, and then just going game to game to game and being absolutely freakish. He played 79 snaps against Ole Miss and had a 90.9 rush stop record. Matt, I'm glad you brought up Mekhi Wingo because he's someone that I just can't get enough of. He's very fun to watch.
So think about him next year when Mason Smith returns, and you got those two.
The Twin Towers, my friend. Oh, my God. Those two are going to be the Bash brothers. Matt, last question, my friend. Thank you. Your time. Thank you so much for spending your time with us for just a little bit here, Matt. Thank you so much, brother. If LSU finish 9-3, though, should Brian Kelly be named Coach of the Year, even with a loss to Alabama or Arkansas?
No. Josh Heupel is going to deservingly get that honor. Brian Kelly's there's a lot of ways to classify what makes a great coach and who does the best job. But I mean, Josh Heupel's got Tennessee ranked in the top 5. Hendon Hooker might win the Heisman. They're probably going to be a playoff team. That's incredible. And it doesn't make Brian Kelly's accomplishments this year to this point any less incredible, but that's just next level. I mean, I don't know that there's a soul that had Tennessee anywhere near the playoff this year.
I loved what I
Um,
saw doing my preview with them. I thought they would be competitive. I did not think this. No,
Nobody did.
no.
I mean, I liked Hendon Hooker a lot last year. It's great. I mean, and their offense scares you. I mean, we talked
Yep.
about that a lot, where you felt that Tennessee offense would be able to score on anybody, but we've seen a lot of scary offenses in the SEC that can score a lot of points, but can they hold up on both ends and score on everybody? And they've done it to everybody in tough situations. And no, man, if I get a vote, which I don't, but if I did have a vote, it would be Josh Heupel.
See, there's a lot of the talk of Kelly getting Coach of the Year. I wanted to see if you were buying into the fairy dust after Ole Miss. Um, Matt, you never buy into the fairy dust. You always see it clearly. You always see through the haze, the wild purple and gold haze that is LSU football. And I love talking to you about these things because you blow my mind sometimes with your perspectives, things that maybe I'm like, I've thought of before, but I couldn't quite put into words, which is strange for me. And you put them in, you somehow can do this. Matt, always a pleasure having you on, my friend. Tell Drew I say what's up. Tell the wife
Oh
I say
well.
what's up. You have an awesome night, my friend, and thank you for coming on. And let's hope for the rest of the season to be as fun as it's been so far.
It's my pleasure, Lon. Thanks for the invite, man. Have a great night.
Always, Matt. Thank you, brother.